Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fix My Fees podcast, where merchant services is so boring. I bring on interesting people and have them discuss their business and hopefully teach you something new. I am your host, Tavius Washington, and today I wanted to bring in someone who is real sophisticated in understanding what it means to execute through the immersion of intentionality, right? This is somebody that earlier in their career was one of the few instructors of Dale Carnegie that actually had the 9 certifications, 12th in the world in production. So he took that and moved it forward to become a master corporate trainer and executive coach. And I'm excited to talk about this because there's some things that we joked about when it came to like ADHD and succession that are awesome that I just think you guys were really, really going to love. So please give a warm welcome in with my guest today, Joseph Price. Hey, Joe, how you doing today?
Hey, it's great to be here, and thank you for having me on.
Well, it's nice to have you here. I came across what you were doing, and there was so much what you were talking about, having that like intelligence and that mental fortitude and how you can start to live intentionally. And I thought that was a cool concept. But we did also talk a little bit about you being with Dale and the 12th producer in the world. So before we start talking about where you're at now, how did you even get there? What was it like being that top producer, and how did that convert to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So my entry into this industry, training and development, came through Dale Carnegie in 1982 when I answered an ad for a salesperson. I was living in the Washington, D.C. area in Virginia at the time.
Ooh, love Washington.
Exactly. And got hired as a typical salesperson and was not the greatest salesperson in the world. But what I really started to get into was the Dale Carnegie principles, the man himself and the way that he lived and wanted to get his principles and concepts across to business people. And so I started studying to learn how to instruct the programs. And the more I got certified for each one of Dale Carnegie programs, the more I understood the material more in depth and how it applies in people's life, both in their personal and their business life. And my sales went up. And then I started to realize that I gravitated toward helping companies improve their bottom line in a way that made it sustainable and scalable. And so I started working strictly with companies, helping analyze root cause problems that they were experiencing, because most of the time consultants or coaches or trainers, they deal with the symptom of the problem, right? Two departments are fighting with each other, so teach them some communication skills, right? Instead of figuring out why are they fighting each other, find out what the root cause of that thing is and then solve it. And then on top of that, teach them the skills of communication and getting along with each other. And now you've not only fixed the symptom, you fix the root cause problem, and it never comes back. And the more I started to do that, the more it started to grow, and people really started to get the results that we were guaranteeing. And that led me to be the 12th highest producer of Carnegie enrollments in the world for about 6 years.
Nice. That's awesome. And I love how that's starting to, you already started to get the foundational aspects while you were producing and pumping out. And then what was the thing that kind of switched or happened that made you say, you know what, there's a little bit more that I can do. There's way more ways I can tap in or help people. What happened that made that switch?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So as I was designing the solutions based on the root cause problem that I found that a lot of Carnegie material was great, solved a lot of the pieces of the puzzle, but there were still pieces of the puzzle still missing that Carnegie material could not address. And so I became a student again and started studying what would fill those pieces in and make a whole picture solution for my corporate clients. And over time, those individual pieces for those individual clients, I started to see that they were interconnected. And what came out of that was the intentional success system that now systematizes the whole process of creating solutions
Right.
that are, again, sustainable and scalable.
Got it. So how do you work with your clients? Like what are the things that you're doing? Is it more of like a short-term thing that you're kind of conquering little things at a time? Is it broader? How do you work with your clients?
Yeah, so it differs for each client. The first thing that I do is I listen very carefully to what they think the problems are. And what I've learned over 40 years is that we attack, as people, we attack problems from a symptom point of view more often than we do a root cause, right?
Yeah.
So what the client was telling me, part of the problem, but only the surface symptom of the issue, because that's what they were dealing with at the time. That was causing the issues that they were facing. But I told them my approach was not to solve the symptom, because the symptom will always come back if the root cause is not addressed. You know, it's like a doctor dealing with the rash on your arm and giving you a cream, and it goes away for a week, but then it comes back, or it comes back in a different place, because we never really found out what caused the rash to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So what causes the communication breakdown? What causes the lack of initiative? What causes the lack of understanding that people have about why things work the way they do, right? And so I was sort of educating the client on how to look at problems. At the same time, I was doing my root cause analysis. And then I would present the solution and say, this is a system issue, which we can deal with one piece of the system. But when we fix that, that change is going to have an effect on other parts of your business or other parts of the system, because systems are interconnected with each other, right? And so I would show them, if we did this, it would have this effect. Are we okay with this effect? If not, we've got to do this and then work on this and then work on this. And now we've got a holistic solution for the issue that's a little bit more long term.
Yeah. I like that, because you're right. A lot of people do, because entrepreneurship, especially in like business ownership, can be chaotic. It's easier to put out the fire here than to figure out what started the fire, right?
You got it.
Easier to go, we're not getting sales. The sales team aren't making enough sales. They need to push harder, than it is to go, well, why aren't they? Because then that might lead to marketing, but then why aren't they? And it's like, instead of going through there, it's easier to just blame one and push it out. Or even, in a personal lives, I'll take me, for instance. I was doing a lot of drinking back in the day. And, the symptom was I was tired in the morning. I had headaches. I had stuff, and I kept doing it. When the root cause, boy, stop drinking. So I understand what you mean. And so for you, a lot of the things that you're talking about is like being intentional. For your definition, what do you feel like it means to be intentional, and what do people get wrong about that?
Yeah, I sure appreciate the question. But would you mind if I go back and talk about the example that you gave about your own life?
Yeah.
Because this is really what I do with my clients, especially my individual coaching clients. Your process was right. But if we want to go back even further, the question that I would ask you is, what caused the drinking to begin with? Right?
Because I didn't even go that far. You're right.
Right? You see? Because there had to be some catalyst in you that caused you to drink the way that you did. And if you realized that drinking wasn't the answer, maybe you found a different answer to address that issue, but you did it unconsciously. And now you are unconsciously creating these loops for yourself where there's no real way out until you find out the why. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because what you're saying is, it's almost like you could technically replace a vice with a vice where you feel like you're being better, but you still haven't uncovered the root cause. So it's just another loop of the same thing. You just won't find out till later.
You're absolutely right. I did a lot of coaching in the addiction recovery industry. And one of the things that was one of the pet peeves that I talked about and trained and coached about was people with addiction have a tendency to substitute one addiction for another. They want to run away from their drug or alcohol addiction, so they become addicted to meetings, or they become addicted to their sponsor, or they become addicted to something else that takes the place of their original addiction. They haven't solved the problem. They've just substituted one for the other. And we have to bring that to people's conscious mindset, because a lot of the things that happen to us, both personally and business, happen unconsciously. Well, if they're unconscious, we can't do anything about them.
Right.
So part of intentionality, sort of bridging to the next question, is bringing the unconscious to the conscious so that we can intentionally and purposefully find out what the root cause of that issue is, why that root cause surfaced to begin with, and then create a holistic approach to solve that and make things better.
I love how I'm glad that you went back and brought up my example, because it does show that even when we think we have it, there's probably
That's
still a
the
level,
cool
right?
thing.
We kind of make ourselves like, hey, we did deeper. That's better. That's good. We cut it off and kind of move forward, because there's still other fires in other parts of our life. We just have to keep moving, that we didn't get to that underlying. Man,
Absolutely
I
right.
appreciate you bringing that back
Right?
up. That is, yeah.
And it's interesting. I'll teach you one of the techniques that you can learn to get to the root cause of the problem, past all the symptoms. And that is a technique called the 5 whys, right?
Mhm.
And
The
you
5
say, why is this happening? Okay, now I understand that. Well, why did that happen? Okay, I understand that. Why did that happen? Right? There's a great YouTube video that people can watch about the Jefferson Memorial and the use of the 5 whys to address a problem that memorial had. And the problem was that it needed to be cleaned more often than the other memorials. And that constant cleaning was breaking down the surface of the memorial. So they were asking the question, why do we have to clean this thing more often than some of the other memorials? It turns out that there were more bird poop on that memorial than all of the others, right? And so the question was, why is there more bird poop?
Bird poop, right.
Well, there's more bird poop because the insects that came to the memorial were food for the birds. And there were more insects. Well, why were there more insects? Right? So you keep doing this 5 whys, and it turns out that the lighting system that they used for the memorial was different from the one that they used in other memorials. Now, you wouldn't connect the lighting system to more cleaning, but when they changed the lighting system, the insects weren't attracted to the light anymore. Therefore, the birds didn't have the food in abundance as they did. Yeah. And now they didn't come to the memorial and poop as much. Change the lighting system, less cleaning. But you wouldn't make that connection
at all
unless you went through that 5 why technique.
Right. And do you use that like as a starting ground for all scenarios, or certain scenarios? Because there is things that like people go through where I feel like a lot of times we don't. And like, even now I'm thinking about it, I've never went 5 deep on like why I have imposter syndrome. Why do so many suffer so much about it, right?
Sure.
Or what it's like, or why we aren't where we are. It's easy to just stop at the second or even the third, right? We may really look at ourselves internally and get down to that third layer, but I didn't even think about that. How are you utilizing? Is it something that people can use at all times, or is it special cases?
Yeah. Within Intentional Achievements, we have more than 40 tools that we have and train our coaches and our instructors with that, depending on the issue that they're dealing with, will determine the tool that we use, right? My father, just give you a little personal history. My father was a mechanic and a tool and die cutter. And in our garage, the walls were filled with toolboxes with tools like crazy in every drawer. But every time the Snap-on truck came around, he'd buy another tool. And I'm a kid. I'm wondering what's going on. You got all these tools. Why do you need another tool? And he said, you can't do the right job without the right tool and without knowing how to use the right tool. Right? So you can only have a hammer, but if you only have a hammer, then everything else looks like a nail. Right?
Yeah.
And if you only have one tool, it'll work in certain circumstances, but it won't work in others. So you develop this toolbox of tools that said, this problem requires this tool, and here's how I'm going to use it.
So is that what you were talking about when I was reading up on like how you work your internal iOS, like your internal operating system? Is that what that is?
Yeah, good for you. So again, bridging back to your original question, which I haven't answered yet, which is what is intentionality, right? So yes, you're right. Intentionality first starts as an internal operating system. It's the standard by which we need to judge our thoughts and our behaviors because they need to be aligned, right? So intentionality starts as an internal operating system, and that operating system works just like a computer operating system. It guides everything else that happens, right? And what it does for us as individuals, it aligns our thoughts and behaviors in order to transform our intentions into intentional achievements, right? So all of us have intentions of things that we want to accomplish. I'm sure you have a list of things that you would like to have happen in your life.
Yeah.
Right in the next couple of years. And the question becomes, how many of those intentions actually come to fruition in the most intentional way? Right. And so what we need to do is say, somebody says, well, I had a good intention and I tried, but it didn't work out, but it's okay. And what I say to them is, yeah, that's true. But what if you can put more intentionality into it, change your thoughts, change some of your behaviors, and actually guarantee to bring about those intentions? That creates a whole different scenario.
Right. So it becomes less of a word and more of a thing you do. Is that what you're saying? Like intentionality does seem like something, I want to be intentional about it. I was trying to be, that wasn't my intentions, where it's less of a word and more of an action.
Yeah, good for you. So when we use the word intention, intention is something that we want to have happen or we desire to have happen. Being intentional to bring it about means that we're bringing deliberate planning and action to those intentions in order to make them real. So intention is desire and mental, and intentional is combining the mental with deliberate planning and action in order to make things happen.
Now, I may be throwing a wrench in this, and maybe I'm a little off, but
Not a
one
problem.
thing for me, right? And I like throwing myself under the bus because I hope that other people are kind of dealing with the same thing, and they may be a little bit too scared to ask. But like, sometimes it's hard for me to be intentional, or at least from what I perceive because of my ADHD. I'm like, man, I want to do this. I want to be intentional with this. Shiny object syndrome runs me the other way. And then I'm like,
Yes.
it's like, oh, I'm good at sales and I get pulled in sales. And oh, I'm good at this and I get pulled in this. I need to focus on this. It just kind of feels hard to be intentional with that kind of aspects. What are your thoughts on that? It may not necessarily be around ADHD, but when people are thinking they're trying to be intentional, but just can't really get there, if that makes sense.
Right. So the first thing is the realization of something that you want to change, right? We can't change something that we're not aware of. So kudos for you for being aware of an issue that you want to change and you want to change intentionally. A lot of people don't get there, right? The second aspect of it is it's not necessarily just people with ADHD, or, they might be a little bit on the spectrum and have those kind of challenges. All of us get sidetracked and distracted, right?
Right.
So there are certain techniques that we can use to say there's something that we teach in one of our programs called keep your hat on. And what that means is that a study was done, and it says the average person gets interrupted every 12 minutes, if not more,
I
right?
believe that with the phones nowadays, it's
Right? Now,
you know what I mean?
something that would normally take 60 minutes, if we blocked out that time with no interruptions, with being interrupted that often, takes us 2 to 2.5 hours to accomplish that same task.
Yeah.
So what we tell people is, okay, the first thing about time management is keep your hat on, which means when you're involved in a particular task, don't stop that task until you come to a logical stopping point. You don't have to finish it, because some projects need long-term thinking and long-term effort, but you break that long-term project into doable blocks that have logical stopping points to them. And you say to yourself, I'm going to continue until this stopping point. Then I'm going to take that activity hat off, and I'm going to put the next activity hat on. And I'm going to bring that one to the next logical stopping point, take that activity hat off, and then put the next activity hat on. Now, how do we deal with the distractions? We start by realizing and being aware that we are distracted, and again, go back to the question of why do we allow ourselves to be distracted? Do we not want to do the task that we're doing? Is it boring? Do we think it's not worth it? Is this new task more important or more inspiring or motivating than the other? So we have to analyze what those shiny objects are and why we get distracted.
Yeah.
And then we put a tool and technique in called the if-then scenario. Before you get distracted, you say to yourself, if this happens, then this is what I'm going to do. So when I'm in a project, or before I start a project, I say, I'm going to take this project to its logical stopping point. If I get distracted with something like blah, 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 this is what I'm going to do. Right?
So it's like a little mini punishment.
Not a punishment. It is a mini plan ahead of time in order for you to take an intentional action instead of reacting to the shiny object when it occurs.
Right.
Okay. So you're pre-planning and being intentional about, if this happens, then I'm not going to allow it to happen. I'm going to do this instead.
Got it. Okay. And so it's like, if I get distracted by Facebook, I'm picking up my phone all the time, and it's like, okay, if I touch my phone, no way I could get distracted, I have to do 20 push-ups, something like that. Is that what you mean? Or does it have to be something
do it
like
that way, right? But then you're putting a punishment on an activity that you want to do, and the axiom is reward the behavior that you want. Don't punish yourself for the behavior that you want, right? And so if I get distracted by Facebook, if I'm going to be intentional, I'm going to turn my phone around so I don't see it, or I'm going to put my phone in a different room.
Right.
Or if it does happen and I see it, I'm going to force myself to stay on that project, and to reward myself for staying on that project, then I'm going to take myself out to lunch, or I'm going to have a milkshake and, instead of coconut water, or whatever the issue is. You want to reward the behavior that you want to see, not punish the behavior that you're trying to develop into a skill.
Yeah, because whichever way you're going with it, even if your intentions are right, you're still putting your intentions towards it. So if
Absolutely
you
correct.
do the if then in a negative way, no matter if your intention is to stay on the positive side, your mind has still put the intention on the negative.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yep.
Ah,
And then you get distracted from the actual work that you're doing. You're not concentrating on that, and you're not doing the best job possible in the work that you're doing at that time.
right. Which then can snowball into things like if you're trying to, let's say, build a business that you can leave down to your kids and your mind is scattered everywhere, then you may build the right business that makes money, but not the intentional business of being able to pass down
Absolutely
kids
correct.
because you've just been working through the motions. Even though your intention was there, it's still not the proper way to do it.
Yeah, correct. Or you're not putting the systems in place that would guarantee the legacy to continue because you're so
Mm.
focused on activity, right? Which is important for the entrepreneur and the small business owner. But we get locked in, as Michael Gerber used to say, we get locked in on working in the business instead of working on the business.
Right.
And the more we forget to work on the business takes over and starts running us instead of us running the business. And then that's not scalable. We get burned out. We get all kinds of problems. And then, havoc reigns.
Yeah. It's like that. What do they say? A lot of times people give up the 9 to 5 to work a 5 to 9. Right.
Exactly correct. Yeah, you're right. Right?
You start to push there and then you've gotten there and you think, and that's one thing that I have seen is people have put so much into effort that get to a certain point where they feel like the only way to double is to double effort, which means more things have to suffer.
You are absolutely correct. And the issue is this. The success that people want, especially in small business areas, entrepreneurs, is not to increase the effort, but to increase the system effectiveness so that the business is not single person dependent.
Right.
That's the only way to create a business that's scalable and that can create a legacy. Because if it's singly dependent on you, it can only grow to your capacity.
Right.
Right. And we want something that is beyond our capacity. And the only way to do that is set up systems and teams inside the business that make that business work without you.
God, I like that. So, we do have like on the side, your book is like, it says stop reacting and start living intentionally. What do you mean by the reacting part? Stop reacting. Do you feel like most people are just kind of going through the motions and just playing the reaction game to everything?
Studies have shown that 95% of the time we are 95% reactive.
I
Right?
believe.
But
I
we have to
completely
understand what reaction is and what the opposite of reaction is, which is response and intentional action, because it's actually a process. So if you were to define what the term reaction means, how would you define it? Because what I have studied over the 40 years of doing this is that our actions are defined by the definition of the term that we're trying to execute.
Right.
Right. And so our definition determines our action. So what is your definition of the term reaction?
I would say my definition when I first think of reaction is something that makes you move, like something that right now causes you to act, right? Something that is happening in the moment that causes you to act. And it can be something that people even overlook. Like, for instance, I eat breakfast every day, but I didn't realize it was a reaction until you said it because it's not the same time. It's just whenever my stomach goes, bro, and I'm like, all right, this is the time.
There you go.
I eat it every time, but I'm always waiting for the reaction instead of having a set time and being preemptive. So it can even be in small things like that where you're always reactive, waiting for something to cause you to move.
Good for you.
Something that causes you to act. There we go.
Yeah. So our definition adds a couple of very key things to that definition. So our definition is an out of control action based on something that happens to us or based on an outside stimulus. right?
I like that.
It's an out of control action. Now, what most people have difficulty with when they first hear that concept is, I'm again going to come back to the example that you gave, that you don't eat until your stomach rumbles, right? The
Mm-hmm.
question is, who's in control of your action to go eat?
Well, if that's the case, it's my stomach is in control, not me.
You are exactly right, right? So
Right.
what we don't realize is we are giving control over our life to the thing that we are reacting to,
Mm.
right? And let's say that we're a customer service rep and an angry customer comes on and yells at us like crazy and we react and yell back, right?
Right.
Who's in control of us as a customer service rep at that moment?
Like my first thought was the person, because they're mad at us, but it also could be our own anger that is in control of us too, because we're not controlling that.
It is the angry customer that's in control of you.
Right.
For as long as you allow that to happen, right?
Right.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Do you like, respect, or admire what that angry customer did?
Probably not.
Probably not. Will you ever talk to that customer again? Maybe, but
Maybe.
probably not.
Right.
Do you know this person at all outside of this interaction?
No.
The answer is no. Here's a person you don't know. You will probably never talk to again. You do not like, respect, or admire what they've done, and you've allowed them to control you.
Man, you're talking to how I am on social media now, man. You're making me rethink stuff.
You got it? Right? But that's why I say the studies are right about we're reactive 95% of the time and we're not even aware of it. So the first thing that we need to do is to gain awareness of when and where we react. The second thing is to understand why we react that way.
Right.
Because the why is actually the stimulus for our reaction. It is not the event itself. Believe it or not, it is not that angry customer if we're going to go one layer deeper, right? It is your interpretation of why they got angry that is your stimulus for the reaction. You're taking their anger personally.
Yeah.
And as a result of interpreting their anger personally at you, you automatically react with anger back. But if you saw that person in a different light, if you interpreted it a different way, it would allow you to gain control and respond instead of reacting. So when that angry customer starts yelling at you, you say to yourself, I understand where this guy is. If I had that experience, I would feel the same way. Now I turn my anger into empathy and I respond in control to that person instead of reacting out of control.
Right. And that allows you to be in control. And while you're in control, the variables become a lot more controllable, right?
Absolutely correct.
They're toned down. You can maybe help them, right? You can maybe turn them into a lifelong customer because they love you now, right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Now, here's the interesting staged process. Angry customer yells at us. We put a meaning into that. We take it personally and we react. That reaction is an out of control action. We've given control of what we're doing with that customer over to that customer. Now, when we change the meaning and the stimulus changes to where I'm now empathetic, I now respond. What's the definition of response? An in control action based on the outside stimulus, based on the thing that happened to us. But there's one layer deeper that if we really want to be truly intentional, and I teach this tool to customer service people in our customer delight program. A customer comes on board and starts yelling at me. I stop, I don't react, and I don't respond. I say this. I understand your feeling. I want to understand why you're feeling that way. So could you please vent to me the situation? Both of us will sort of vent out the emotion attached to it.
I like that.
Then I'm going to analyze the problem and help you fix the problem. How does that sound?
I like that. You're
Right?
you're giving them permission to say, "Hey, your anger is justified. Let it out."
Absolutely
You know
correct.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Now they can, without feeling like you're going to, react or punch or hang up or something, and they can
Yeah.
vent it all out. And then once it's all out, it's like that. All right, now where can we go from here? Because I finally let it out. I
Yeah.
like that.
So let me show you the stage. Reaction, out of control based on something that happens. Respond, in control based on something that happens. Intentional action precedes the thing that happens and controls it before it happens.
I'm starting to see more of the the opportunity loss or the cost of not being intentional or
Are
thinking
you kidding?
within being it.
You are
Right.
absolutely correct. I'm talking that cost unknowingly for companies worldwide is in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
I believe it. I definitely believe it. Because it's a trickle down effect. Without you being intentional, the more employees you have, the more people can't rally around even like the ultimate goal of the culture because you're not having an intention behind it, which means no one else can.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely right.
Starting to grow.
So let's talk about a small business or even a large business. A corporate culture inside a company is extremely important for the success of the company, right?
Right.
How is culture developed? There's only two ways culture develops: by default or intentionally.
Yeah. By default or
Right?
design. Yeah.
So I'm a business owner and I say, here's the culture that I want to establish in my company. And I intentionally establish that culture, create systems in place that reinforce that culture, and then communicate that culture with my employees every single day. If I don't do that, the culture happens around me by default, and then I have to pick up the pieces of a culture that I don't like in my business and try to solve something and create something new out of something that was bad, right?
Right.
It's like we have a habit that we want to break. And we think that all we need to do is to create the new habit. That's not really true. We have to break the old habit and substitute the new habit at the same time. Because if we're trying to do a new behavior with an old behavior still in place, the old habit is going to take over 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So intentionality is a lot deeper and a lot more involved than most people give it credit for.
So what is this? What is it that you wish people knew about intentionality? Because I think we all have our own thoughts about it. And I mean, just this time here, my thoughts before this call, my thoughts right now. And I'm like, man, what I do about intention, what I thought I knew about intention is just like way different. And
Yeah.
it makes sense. The more we talk about it, the more it goes, ooh, I understand why I thought it was intention or felt it was, but it really wasn't. It was just curing the symptoms. So what do you wish people knew about being intentional or living intentionally?
Yeah. Dale Carnegie had a principle. He said, find out where people are, meet people where they are, and take them where you want them to go. Right. And why I bring that principle up is we have to understand what most people think intentional is. And most people think it's acting purposefully, which is a major part of being intentional.
Yeah.
Right. But what does that actually mean in reality every day? Right? People don't understand that more effort doesn't mean more intentionality, like you talked about before.
Right.
Intentionality has to do first with a mindset that says, I am not going to be reactive. I am going to identify where I'm being reactive in my life, and I'm going to put myself in the process of reacting and then responding and then being intentional about it.
Mhm.
And going through that process is not easy because we're hardwired to react, right?
Yeah.
That binary thinking for survival of fight or flight is inbred in our hardwiring as a human being, right? And it was absolutely correct in the days that we were running from saber-toothed tigers. But we're not running from saber-toothed tigers anymore. We're not living in a fearful survival mode every single moment of every day like we used to. But we still have that hardwired mentality of fearful skepticism and the presence of lack instead of the presence of abundance, right? So it has to start first mentally to make a mental decision. I'm not going to react anymore. I'm going to figure out more ways to be intentional. And then start realizing that intentionality is more of a system. And our intentional successism has 9 drivers for our intentional behavior. And those drivers are this: purpose for everything that we do. So there's 2 kinds of purpose. One is the purpose of the bigger, grandeur question of why am I here? What's my purpose in life? But on a daily basis, you and I make hundreds of decisions every day. Do we have a purpose for every decision that we make? Because if we don't have a purpose for every decision we make, 95% of the time, it's going to be reactionary.
Reaction. Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing is consciously understand everything that we do needs to have purpose attached to it.
Right.
The second thing is that it has to align with the values that I hold as an individual. I have personal value system that influence, governs, and guides my life and my actions. Now, most of us don't take the time to identify what our true values are, but they are influencing our life, whether we're conscious of it or not, right? And so to consciously understand what our values are and what drives us, now we can make more purposeful and intentional decisions in alignment with those values. So our decisions become less stressful, less emotional, more purposeful, and more intentional, and therefore better decisions as a result. The third driver is vision. If we don't know where we're going, we'll have no idea when we finally get there. So right? So we have to have a clear picture of where we're going so we know when we're getting there and when we're getting close. It's like we're taking a driving vacation, and the mile markers along the road help us know how far we've come, but they also help us and inspire us to know how close we are getting to the destination that we're heading toward, right? If I am super tired on a long trip and I want to stop at the next rest stop or the next hotel and spend the night, but then I see a mile marker and I'm only 10 miles away, am I going to stop for the night, or am I going to push myself through because I know I'm so close?
Don't push. You might get that jolt of energy. Like, ooh,
right? You
a little
see?
bit longer and I can rest.
And that's what vision can do for us if we have a clear picture of where we're going. So now I have my purpose, my values, and vision in alignment. And now I start to plan that trip. I start to plan my life. I start to plan my business and say, I'm going to follow these predetermined, deliberately architected steps in order to get from where I am to where I'm going. Without a plan, our route looks like this, right? With a plan, it's straight to it. And if we get detoured, but we know where we're going. So the straight line back to where we're heading and then back on the track saves us time, saves us energy, and saves us overall impact on how we get to the place that we want to get to. So planning is really important, but a lot of us have structured our life and our time in such a way that even if we put a plan together, we won't be able to follow it because our use of time and our structure of our life is in conflict with some of the things that we have in our plan. So now we have to restructure our life a little bit, and we have to restructure how we use our time in order to effectively accomplish the plan.
Right.
So structure becomes our fifth driver of behavior. The sixth driver is what I call the right people driver. We have to have the right people in the right place doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. So we have to have a team around us that encourages us and challenges us and supports us in creating the plan and restructuring our life in order to get to where we want to go. But we're also going to have people who are holding us back or toxic people in our life that we have to sort of get rid of or have a conversation about. And so having the right people in the right place doing the right things at the right time is the sixth driver that's important for us, because as human beings, we're not designed and we shouldn't do things alone, right? If you look at all of the successes in the world, even for the people who say they're self-made successes, if you look at their life a little bit more intentionally, there was a team of people around them that allowed them to be the self-made person that they became.
Right. Right.
So now we got what we need to know in our life, which is the purpose, values, and vision. We have the plan of planning and restructuring and putting the right people in our life. And now we have to be and do what we've seen and planned. So now we have to execute leadership in our life. But we can't be good external leaders for people outside of ourselves unless we can lead ourselves first. So we have to execute internal leadership in our own life before we can demonstrate external leadership in other people's lives. Right? So that's the seventh driver. The eighth driver is, probably you've heard the term before, emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Right? And a lot of people misunderstand what emotional intelligence really is, but that one subject or that one driver can contribute up to 78% of our overall success.
Really?
Absolutely. According to studies. Right? Now, how does it do that? Well, we have to understand what the definition of emotional intelligence is, right? It is the intelligent and intentional use of emotion in making more purposeful and intentional decisions. When we use our emotions properly in making decisions, we react less, we respond more, we become more intentional, and all of the outcomes become better, right?
Right. Because everything's
when we have intentionally to be driven by our emotion, now we're reacting most of the time and we're back into the firefighting mode that we create by being so reactional. So emotional intelligence, the eighth driver, and now here's the ninth driver that pulls the whole system together. And we call it courage and fortitude. Courage is the strength to take the first step in the face of fear. If I'm afraid to do something, I need, according to studies, I need 10 seconds of courage in order to make that thing happen. Most people think that they have to have this big, courageous, epiphany in order to make something happen. But it's not true, because the decision that we need to make to step into that fear only takes seconds.
Yeah.
Right? So if we can look at that situation and say, I only need a little bit of courage in order to step into this thing that I'm afraid of, and then I take that step, now I'm in it, and I can intentionally do the things that I need to do in order to make it happen. But how many people start something but never finish it? And so, yes, we need the courage to start, but we need the fortitude to finish and overcome the challenges that we experience along the way in order to get the result that we're looking for.
Right.
Now, that 9 driving system is a lot deeper than most people think intentionality actually is.
Yes. Yes. Right. But it also understand, like, I like that because the 9, it is broken up into 3 areas, but it becomes, like you said, like digestible. And it was almost like you were saying before when we were talking about being intentional with your time, like I'm going to do this thing. And if we think about changing our entire internal iOS, it seems like a huge undertaking, which you would
Absolutely
never
correct.
take. But if you're like, hey, listen, right now, let's focus on your purpose. What is
Yes,
your purpose? Because then your purpose will align your values. Once you have your values, you can create the vision.
you
Once you
got
have
it.
your vision, you can create the plan. The plan can be structured around your life, then getting the right people. Then you can start to execute your leadership, have that emotional intelligence, and have the courage to finally put it into place and the fortitude to get it. I love that. I
Isn't that
like
cool?
that. Yeah.
Now,
It
think
is a
about
sequence
an
that
entrepreneur.
builds on itself.
It really is true. And think about an entrepreneur who's trying to build a sustainable and scalable business to leave to his legacy.
Mm-hmm.
If he or she puts those 9 drivers in place, we properly, right? Because you need some coaching along the way. But
Right.
if you put that 9 driver system in place, we guarantee the success.
Right. And that's why you start with the whys and deep, because it's really hard to get the purpose if you don't know that, because a lot of times you will see with entrepreneurs, they'll say, I want to have freedom and I want to be able to make money and I want to be able to leave a legacy for my kids.
Right.
But how many people have quantified what even legacy for their kids means? You know
It's
what I
true,
mean?
right?
Like you hear the beginning so much, but then you do it. So I like that because you can't go, well, I need that. Well, why? Well, I want to make sure my kids never want for anything. And I want to make sure I can experience the world. Well,
Yeah.
why? And that third why is like, and I see why you start with purpose now, because
Yeah.
you need to go far enough to understand what the real purpose is. And if your purpose is to leave a true legacy for your kids, how you plan your business, how you plan your values around your business is going to be completely different than the person whose purpose is make $10 million.
Absolutely correct. Now, here's the funny part. I'm going to take you back one more layer, just like I did in the initial example that you gave about drinking. Why did the person start the business to begin with? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe they're working for a company that they hate. They can't stand it anymore. And they say to themselves, I can't stand it anymore. And why am I doing this overwork for this guy who doesn't appreciate me? I'm going to do it myself. Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you start your business, and that's a reaction to the fact that you hate the job that you have. If you start your business in reactionary mode, your entire business will be built in reaction.
Yes.
And not intentionally.
I love that. Yeah.
You say it?
Yeah. Because when you start something from a reaction, everything is from the reaction, right?
Yep.
If your first thing of, why you start a business is because you hate your job and it was like, you know what? Fine, I quit. And then you go into it, then everything stumbles from, I have to, oh shoot, well, I have to put myself out there. Well, I have to, it is a reaction instead of a planned execution. So,
and then everything you do from there is a reaction to that initial reaction. And you just created a chain reaction in your business that's very hard to reverse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And so by understanding why you want to leave your job and then creating the purpose around what your business is, now you can have a better bridge than going into it.
Absolutely. The starting of your business should not have anything to do with what you were doing before.
Right.
Right. The start of the business is, I have this idea. I have this impact that I want to create. I have this legacy. There is a need in the market that I can solve. And I'm going to intentionally identify that need, put a system in place to solve that, and then grow that into a business that becomes sustainable.
Right.
That's intentionally driven, purpose driven business 101.
Yeah. I didn't think about that because that you can tend to feel it even in other scenarios outside of business when someone's reasoning isn't the thing, it's something else, right? I date this specific woman because other women do this. I eat this specific food because of other this. And he always feels off when your reason for doing something is not because you like doing the thing. It's
It's
because something
absolutely
else
true.
pushed you away, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you got to think about that until you said it. And so it's like, if you're like, I started this business because I hated another business, it's
Right.
the same cohesiveness as if you did it with other things in your life.
Yeah. And let's take that same principle. I had a business mentor of mine teach me this concept, which I thought was fascinating because I had never thought about it before. In your personal relationships, right?
Mhm.
Because we have 9 areas of our life that we have to harmonize. In structuring, we have a primary relationship. We have our family. We have our career. We have our finances. We have our personal health. We have our physical health. We have our spiritual life. We have our community life. All of these things that we're trying to quote unquote balance, right? Or create harmony, and that we don't understand is a system unto itself, that when we deal with one aspect of our life, it has a direct impact on other areas of our life. If I start a business, I have to know I'm spending 14, 15, 16 hours a day getting that business up and running. What effect and impact is that going to have on my primary relationship, on my family, on my spiritual life, on my physical health? If I don't take those things into account, one of those things is going to be affected negatively. I'm going to create a fire in that area that I have to go put out. And now my entire life is putting out fires in all areas of my life instead of being intentional in building the original business I wanted to create for myself. Right. But taking it into the personal life and this concept that my mentor was telling me about, he said, most marriages start 2 people running away from something and run into each other.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right? I choose my spouse because they're 100% different from the previous relationship that I was in. Right?
Mhm.
This person caused havoc. I need somebody who's calm.
Right.
So the person they pick is a reaction to their old relationship instead of being intentional about why I pick this person and what kind of marriage I want with that person for the rest of my life.
Right. And then if it falls apart, you're like, well, I did the thing that was different. It was supposed to be different. It was 100% different than the other person. Well, it was like, well,
You got it.
Jumped into the relationship reactively, and everything was reactive.
Absolutely
Everything came a
correct.
comparison. Everything came a, what is it like versus the other, instead of all of it being about this person and being intentional and being with this person despite
Absolutely
everything else
correct.
around.
And now you can see why the studies say we're 95% reactive in our life.
Reactive. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more it is. A lot of it's reactive. My calendar is set, and I still am reactive to my calendar. How things are moved, when people cancel, when people show up late, when people do it. I'm still reactive. And I guess you don't really know how much you're reactive to everything until someone says, hey, 95% of the time we're reactive. And you go,
Yeah.
probably.
It really is true. And we cannot be intentional, because intentional is the exact opposite of being reactive.
Right.
Right.
So to kind of bring this full circle, just to ask you,
Yeah.
can you walk us through a time where you worked with someone who maybe not necessarily was against it, like they didn't feel like it would work, but maybe they were hesitant because they felt like they were already being intentional, or maybe they felt like, they were doing the right things, but when you brought it to light, talk about their results that happened after they finally accepted it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the great stories I have is a woman who was in our Intentional Life program years ago. She was a top-notch salesperson. Every sales organization that she worked for, she was the number 1 salesperson in that company. And she switched companies, got a great offer from this one company, started working for them. 2 months later, she was the last salesperson of all of them. She started to get very frustrated, very angry. Her life was just a mess because she was reacting to the fact that she used to be number 1 and now she's, number 10 or number 20, and couldn't figure out why.
Right.
And so we had a conversation and we started really delving into the issue. And what we found was fascinating to me, that the sales manager of the company was asking her to do certain things on sales calls that violated her. And she had such turmoil internally because she wanted to listen to her sales manager, but she didn't want to do anything that violated her values. And so she stumbled on the calls and she was trying to serve two masters and it didn't work. And she could not sell in that company to save her life. We would have never found it if we didn't go through a series of questions and tools that I've created to help people find the root cause of issues that are happening in their life. So she had a choice to make. Does she stay in the company and resolve that issue or go somewhere else? She wrestled with that for a couple of weeks. She realized there was nothing she could do staying in that company that wouldn't address that turmoil. She left. She went to another company. In 2 months, she was number one in that company.
Right. I love that. I love that. Because a lot of times you may not realize what it is. Like you said, that internal. I've had that happen too, where I went in and I denied someone. I said, hey, listen, this isn't for you. And I got yelled at. And then it felt like when I went on the next call, I felt like I was trying to do it. And I said, I can't. I had to leave the company. I left it immediately. And then they were like, no. You can do it your way. And I was like, yeah, but this is your values of your company. And it doesn't align with me. So just because I'm doing it the right way doesn't mean I'm putting people that I'm saying yes to or bringing them into the right environment.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely right. And I'll tell you a personal story. When I was back in Carnegie, my last 6 years there, I started to develop this specialty in corporate solutions and solving company problems. And yet, in Dale Carnegie, they had a paradigm of what they called ones and twos. In other words, you'd go into a company, you'd find people who needed some personal improvement or some leadership improvement, and you would enroll them in a public program and you'd send them out of the company into a public Dale Carnegie program and they would improve. And they absolutely did improve. But what happened when they went back into that same company? The culture absorbed them back in and they lost a lot of what they learned.
Right.
And they didn't help themselves or the company as a result. So the money was basically wasted. And so I said, I don't want to do the ones and twos. I want to stay inside the company, solve that company's problems, and measure a substantial return on investment. No one in Carnegie up to that point had done business that way. And so my sponsor, my franchise holder said, look, I want you to be successful. No one else has been successful. Can you split your time? Do some ones and twos and some corporate business. I tried it for several months. It was not working. I was getting very frustrated. And I finally said, look, I've got to make a decision. I have to be intentional about this. You either let me do corporate solutions full time or I have to leave. Right? Well, at that time, I was generating about $200,000 worth of revenue a year. When I finally made the intentional decision to do corporate solutions business only, that following year, I did 550.
Right. Without splitting the difference.
Yep. Because I was intentional about what I knew I needed to do, what was causing me problems, and I had to make an intentional decision one way or the other. But until I did the analysis, I would have stayed in that split focus for a long time, been very frustrated, not have been successful, right? And that feeling of non-success and that feeling of frustration would have carried over into my family, would have carried over into my primary relationship, and then all kinds of fires would have been created as a result.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from, where when we think of like intentionality, and I kind of bring it back to full circle when it comes to like your examples. And now it's like, we think of intentionality as the thoughts that are in our head, not necessarily the actions that we're taking to actually do things. And so like the person made intentional with going to that job, like I'm going to do a good job and do a thing. And then it kept going, okay, well, I'm going to try to say the right words so I can still give these people what they want.
Right.
Right. In the same way with you, when you're like, you're probably like, I am good enough that I could sell both. So I'm going to give it the shot. But then you start to go against it and it's like, the worst, I think the more people take the other side of what you did was you were like, hey, listen, it's one or none. And the other people go, well, it must be me. I got to figure out what's the problem. And they keep
You are
trying to
absolutely
push
correct.
through the
Yep.
worst end of it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why the intentional problem solving becomes an issue, because I don't want to deal with symptoms anymore. I want to deal with the root cause of the problem and then take an intentional action based on that. I can have an intention of doing all kinds of things.
Right.
But if I don't take intentional action in order to bring those intentions to pass, they're going to stay wishes and dreams instead of outcomes that I live.
Love that. I love it. What if somebody wanted to work with you in there? How do they get in touch with you? What are you going to work with them on? Not necessarily, because I know you said everyone is different, but what are going to be the starting basis of what they can look forward to? And who are the type of people that should be reaching out?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have 4 pathways in intentional achievements that we deal in. Corporate solutions, which is medium to large size businesses. So if they're a department head or a division manager and they're really experiencing some challenges, culture problems or on-time delivery or any issue that they want to resolve, then they can come to us. We have a set analysis that we do inside corporate situations where we really analyze what the root cause problem is, help them design a solution, get their people involved so that people own the solution, because when they don't own the solution, they're going to fight the change.
Yes.
So there's a whole process involved in that corporate solution side. The second one is small business owners, right? If you want to start a business, if you started a business, the development of systems inside the business and building teams and pulling that business together, whether it's going to be to sell it in 10 years or to build a legacy that lasts 100 years, there's specific ways of building that business, and we'll help you develop those things. The third is coaching, and we certify coaches, people who want to coach other people using our methodology and our ecosystem, or if somebody is a certified coach by someone else, but wants to add our tools to their toolbox to increase their impact with their clients, we can serve them as well. And then the fourth pathway is our personal development area, where we help people create harmony in their lives, deal with their personal relationships, right? All the various things that happen in their personal life and improve, because, when we become better people, we become better employees, or we become better leaders, or we become better entrepreneurs. So it really starts with us first and then develops into developing the systems that the business needs in order to grow. So people can find us on intentionalachievements.com, and my contact information is there. If they want to contact me personally, they can do it by phone, text, or WhatsApp. And my telephone number is 623-680-1776.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I put that in the YouTube bio. But this has been such a pleasure. I want to, before we go, because I have kept you way longer. This is how you know we're having a great conversation, when I tell you in the beginning it's going to be 30 minutes.
I love this. Absolutely.
But before we go, I do love for people to know, who they're listening to on a personal level, what maybe they can react. Because a lot of people like to work with who they like. And
sure.
So outside of business, when you're not helping people finally turn their life around and start living with that intention, what does Joe like to do in his spare time? What kind of lights him up outside of business?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I ride Goldwing motorcycles, and I've been riding since 2000 when I moved here to Arizona. I've owned 5 Goldwings and put about 200,000 miles on them, and I just love to ride. It lights me up, and I'll take as many trips, during the week as my time allows. But I'll take short trips and long trips. I mean, we've done trips that are 5, 6, and 7,000 miles that last a week or two, and we've taken weekend trips and day trips. So motorcycling, touring motorcycling is something that's a passion of mine. I'm into basketball and volleyball, and I love going to the beach. I go to Rocky Point, Mexico, which is a 4-hour drive for me as often as I can, and just love to be by and in the water anytime I can. Why I moved to the Arizona desert, I have no idea, but that's just how it worked out.
Right. That's awesome. I have my motorcycle license and I haven't even rode in so long.
You would love it.
You're making me miss it. But I think that would be something fun to do. One of those experiences that I've never thought of until now. It's like, you know what? I've never toured, right? Toured on a bike and just kind of look while you're riding. I think that would be cool.
It's amazing.
It'd be cool. But Joe, man, thank you so much for coming on here. I've had fun.
Sure
I don't know if you realize this, but I've been having fun talking about this.
Me too.
It is something that I feel like is one of those topics that everyone knows, but doesn't know. Right? Doesn't understand. There we go. Everyone knows because we've heard the word. We've used the word ourselves. We've seen it. But to honestly sit back and say, do you know what it really means to be that? To embody that on a daily basis in business and personal, I don't think most people do. So thank you for coming on here, shedding light and bringing some nuance to very, very complicated things, but also bringing it in a way that's digestible because I learned a lot and I'm excited to know more about it. And it's got my brain running in 1,000 ways. And that's when you know someone has broken down a concept in a way that's allowed you to really think and take it in instead of it just being so complicated. That's like, wow, that sounds cool. And then you move on. Right. So thank you so much, Joe, for coming on here and bringing that to us, man.
Thank you, man. I really enjoyed the conversation and hope that the people listening get something out of it.
Yeah. And do we have a timeline for when your new book is going to be coming out?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've got 7 books out now, but this one is going to be the landmark book, and it's probably going to be the first quarter of next year.
Awesome, man. I'm looking forward to that. I'm definitely going to get one. And I'll make sure I can update this link with that when it comes out. But I will put how people can get in touch with you with your WhatsApp, your phone number, and your website all down in the bio. Thank you again, Joe. One more time for Joe, everybody. I appreciate you for having it on. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for watching. I would say, as you guys know, even if you're on the fence, reach out to Joe, right? Just ask him, talk with him, have questions, see if he's a good fit. If you are, he'll let you know what's the best route for you if you're not also. So thank you for watching, like and subscribe. And if you too have an interesting business, as you see, I get really curious with amazing people like Joe. If you have a business that's really unique or something you want to talk about, reach out to me at Tavis@fixmyfees.com. Thank you all for watching and good night.